Welcome back to another epic episode of Mac Music Review. In this episode, we're going to be looking at a Glass Animals album. This one is called Dreamland, and Needle Drop said that this album is not good. He gave it the big fat W. I mean, the big fat L. He gave it the big fat worse than zero, actually worse than zero. Not good means it is dumpster fire trash that should not be listened to by human ears. And you know what? I wouldn't go that far. I feel like that's a bit... Anthony Fantano can be one to exaggerate, handing out like zeros and ones. And you know, sometimes he'll be like surprisingly positive, but a lot of other times he'll be extremely critical to things or just not get on board with albums that are really critically acclaimed that other people love. Like giving Fetch the Bolt Cutters a 7, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy a 6. We've addressed these things on the channel. Anyway, this is Glass Animals' third album, and it is a concept record, as all of their albums are, but the concept on this one is their loosest concept to date. And what this concept is with the first track is it drags you into Dreamland, which is this kind of a mind state, actually. A mind state caused by drugs, where you can tell from the very hazy lyrics and the weirdness of the album, but it's not just this hazy, random, displaced mind state. It really is the lead singer's mind state, because some of these songs are personal. This is, by a long shot, the most personal album Glass Animals have ever made. They've never made a personal song, ever. Like, all of their songs are written from different perspectives, from the concept of tribes in an African jungle of African natives, and then one from the perspective of 10 different people pictured on the album cover, none of which are the lead singer Glass Animals, but here he is, and this is his most personal album. And we're introduced into this dream world where things are fun, but they're also just really weird and wacky. The introduction to this world is fantastic. Dreamland is a song, Needle Drop didn't like this song at all. I'm listening to this and I really, really like it. In fact, it's my favorite song on the album. It's just really swells and it's huge and it's weird and it's just really hypnotic, as their music tends to be, but in the best way possible. And it's just a really great introduction. Unfortunately, I mean, Tangerine's not a terrible song. That one's not the worst. It's forgettable and dull, and that's the problem with this thing. The tracks kind of blend together, and when they're not blending together, they're standing out for bad reasons. When the songs are not forgettable, they stick out in a bad way, generally speaking. But Tangerine is serviceable. Honestly, the instrumental's not terrible. It's just lyrically, what? And, okay. Hot Sugar is another song I don't despise, but I don't feel very positively about it. Lyrically, it's another just random gobbledygook, as Needle Drop pointed out very well in his video, pointing out the ridiculous, nonsensical lyrics on this album. Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and here's the thing this album does, and they've done this before in their music, but they're really cashing in on referencing movies and stuff by name, just name-dropping movies and random things that are supposed to be nostalgic in an attempt to be nostalgic. And apparently this is a selling point for some critics, and some critics are like, oh, I love the nostalgic feature of the album. And this is a big turnoff for a lot of other critics who are like, this is so forced and shoved down your throat. I am in the second camp. It's just cringe when he says stuff like Mr. Miyagi and then playing too much GTA, listening to too much Dr. Dre, and it's just like trying to name drop as many things as possible, but it's not really fun. It just comes across as cringe, especially with the vocal delivery of the way he says these things. Anyway, the instrumental, once again, isn't awful on this song. It's just kind of cringe. Tokyo Drifting was the first single for this album, and what's really weird is this is not supposed to be a single. They literally said on Twitter that this was not a single, but I guess they wanted 12 tracks on the album, so it's a single. Kind of like what Post Malone did on Hollywood's Bleeding, where he had super old songs that were absolutely not for the album, put them on the album. It was so weird. They did that with this song, and it's a great song. It's fun. It's really energetic, it's really weird, it's really original, it just works in every way possible. Denzel Curry kills it, the only feature on this album, one of the best rappers in the game, gives his best on this song, and it's really cool. Melon and the Coconut, so indifferent to this song. I couldn't care less. Nothing to say. Your Love. So, this song is an enigma to me because, one, the lyrics are so bland. Such a bland pop love song. That's what this is a pop love song, and it's so boring and bland. And it just, in the instrumental, surprisingly, it's one of the better songs on the album in terms of music and how fun it is, but it's just so bland. It just does not fit on this album at all. Every other song fits in the weirdness of this fictional mind state, Dreamland. This song does not. It's just a very extremely bland love song. We're going to run into that later in the track list, but man, I don't like it. Waterfalls Coming Out Your Mouth. Lyrics on this one are absolutely ridiculous in a bad way. Like, so, like, cringe. Like, super cringe. If you read the lyrics, just listening to it's cringe. You just sit down and read the lyrics, you're gonna be cringing hard. I'm not gonna read the lyrics because Neil Drop already did that, but it's cringe, bro. This is a cringe song. It's Also Incredibly Loud is one of the most disappointing songs I have ever heard, period. I mean, I am not kidding. This song is so disappointing. The whole point of the song, and the most frustrating thing about this is Glass Animals is really good at building to huge, amazing, epic climaxes. They did it amazingly on Zaba on a few tracks, and they do it again and again and again on How to Be a Human Being. And that's what this song sounds like the whole time. Even from the beginning, it's like this building, but it sounds like generic bass drop building that you would hear in like a 2000s pop song. But it never drops. The bass never drops. It just builds and builds and builds, and the song eventually ends. It's 4 minutes long of building. The lyrics aren't good, and it's just building, and nothing happens, and it's so lame. Domestic Bliss is actually commendable for the lyrical content, I would say. It's probably the most personal and the most sad and real song on the album. He seems to be talking, from my interpretation of it, is he's like singing about his mother, and he's like singing to his mother and asking, why are you sticking with this guy? Is it because he reminds you, or just some girl? He's just singing to some girl who's with this guy they don't like. And he's like, why are you sticking with this person who's hurting you? Do they remind you of somebody else? Why are you staying in this bad relationship? So lyrically commendable. Instrumentally, it's bleh. It's fine. It's not memorable at all. And then Heat Waves is so mind-numbingly bad. Lyrically, so ridiculously garbage. It's so generic. And then musically, no. It's so boring. This is such a boring song. Helium is one of the better tracks on the album, simply because it kind of ends the album well. The album ends on a relatively good note, in that it's one of those songs, it's one of those closing tracks. I want to do a video on closing tracks, like the different ways to end an album. And this went with one of the ways to end an album that is referencing another song on the album, or referencing, and what this one does is it references the first song on the album by containing some of the same music. It samples, this song literally samples the song Dreamland. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of a cool ending. But until you get to that point, the song is kind of forgettable and lame. But once you get to the second half of the song, it's kind of cool. I like it. Also worth mentioning, the skits on this thing are just kind of, I'm not bothered by the skits because they're all like 5 seconds long or shorter. Like, their skits are so long, and they're not actively bad. They just don't really add anything to the album, I guess, except for make it feel more personal, I guess. But yeah, skits they're nothing special, I'll say. I could not wait for this album to come out. As a Glass Animals fan, I literally could not wait. I was so hyped, and it was so long. Like, it just felt so long, because How to Be a Human Being came out 2016. I loved that record. One of my favorite albums of 2016. And I was just waiting for them to make a new album. Because I love how they just do concept albums. I love how both of their albums were such strong concept albums where they 100% went with the concept. This is their weakest concept album. It's also their weakest album by a long shot, even though I didn't love Zaba. It's still a really good record. And this is not. This is a very bad record. Yeah, it's a lot of gobbledygook lyrics and some mediocre production and just all around disappointing, and some outright bad songs that I don't like at all. Honestly though, it's not all bad. Like I said, Dreamland is good. Tangerine, Hot Sugar have commendable production. Space Ghost, like, production on this album is not the worst thing ever. Lyrically, it is almost kind of the worst thing ever, and some of the songs are just, you know, outright bad. Just really disappointing overall. I'm gonna have to give this thing, since I'm gonna, you know, I normally rate on a star rating, but I'm not going to, because this is a response to the needle drop video, you know, questioning if it's not good. So on needle drop scale, I'm gonna give this thing a 4 out of 10 for me, dog. It's not good. It's not a not good, but it's not a good album. Yeah. What did you think of this album? This is really weird to me, in that it's really divided critics and critics. I was gonna say critics and fans, but no, critics are very divided. Some critics have said, like AllMusic said, this is the best Glass Animals album. One critic even gave it, for some magazine or music review website, gave it a perfect score. Other critics have given it very positive reviews, and then several have given it very negative reviews. Specifically on YouTube, Spectrum Pulse hated it, Needle Drop hated it. I don't know why ARTV hasn't reviewed it, but yeah, it's getting a lot of mixed reception, which is interesting. Yeah, have a great rest of your day.